Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Microbrew. Oh boy, we've got such a loaded episode. I'm looking forward to this. I have been looking forward to this episode for a few days now. My name is JR Radcliffe. On the other line is Curt Hogg, Brewers reporter for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. We have a big series coming up this week in Milwaukee. It is the return of Craig Counsell, the Chicago Cubs, coming for 4 games. Of course, we're going to talk about that. We have a little more brawl action on Sunday in Boston. A decent series in Boston. They won 2 of 3. Maybe could have snuck one more win in there, but lose Sunday. But certainly have some stuff there to discuss. We've got the Marlins series, which did not go very well, and including a 1-0 loss that we'll talk about. Josh Hader discourse. We have more of that. We got a steal of home. All kinds of fun stuff going on this week. Curt, how you feeling, man? We're headed into the Counsell series. I know this is a big moment.
Boy,
here.
I'm over. You're excited. I'm
excited.
Overwhelmed going into this episode because there's so much, and I don't want to let the people down, and I also don't want to forget anything.
You could never let me down.
I totally forgot about the Hader discourse this week until you mentioned.
We are doing the Hader discourse.
We are not passing up Hader discourse. There are three players, former players, about whose discourse we will not pass up. Can you name them? Hader's one.
Josh Hader, Keston Hiura,
Correct.
Christian Yelich. Did I get them all?
I said former players.
Keston Hiura again.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't know who the third one was. So
I know we didn't have a third one. We just have 2 of them.
Chase Anderson pitched against the Brewers this week.
They've been on a run of former Brewers. You had Anthony Bender,
Birch
former
Smith
Brewers minor leaguer.
Still in the league.
Birch Smith with this year's honorary Paulo Espino, you're still in the league, ! And throwing 97 miles an hour. Oh boy, Birch Smith. One of our 3 up, 3 down, we probably won't have time for this, but we could look at some of the players right now filtering up to the big leagues and making an impact that resulted from minor trades with the Brewers. In general, think their front office has done a great job, but they've had some pretty big misses.
David Fry, you are an all-star.
One of Cleveland's best players, David Fry, is tearing it up. Reese Olson of Detroit is not getting the wins.
It's so funny because the players that turn there's no in between, right? The players that the Brewers trade that turn into all-stars, they trade for
the worst,
Meyer brand garbage bags.
David Fry was
not even the good kind. The kind that rip.
That's true. JC Mejia was suspended for a year and was ineffective. That's the David Fry trade. The Reese Olson trade is the Daniel Norris trade, which was a net negative on the Brewers a couple years ago. There's another one out there that they just let Lucas Erceg go for cash, which at the time made fine sense. There was no room for Lucas Erceg. He's throwing 100 miles an hour for the Oakland Athletics.
It was like May, and he wasn't on the 40-man.
Yeah. So what was the hurry?
We've seen that you call up every single reliever from AAA over the course of a season.
Yes, it's true. It's amazing Lucas Erceg did not get a shot in Milwaukee, but you know what? It's fine. Net positive overall, the front office. You can't convince me otherwise. And also, there are lots of minor trades that we don't think about because neither side won. So whatever. These things happen to every.
Do you want to relitigate the Jesse Winker trade?
I don't.
No,
at the moment.
Let's talk about the week.
We have a lot to talk about, so we're gonna have to save that one for.
Jesse Winker might actually be the third guy on that list of 3 former players.
Is Jesse Winker an all-star this year?
Oh no, it's Rowdy Tellez. It's probably Rowdy Tellez. Yeah,
letting Rowdy Tellez, letting him go. Letting Rowdy go was not a miss by the Milwaukee Brewers. But you know what? We just have too much. We can't go too deep down that rabbit hole.
My bad.
We're losing ourselves already. Craig Counsell's coming to town. The former Milwaukee Brewers manager will be leading the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs that are tail spinning. Do not know, because we're recording this on Sunday and we're not crazy recording this late at night. So we do not know the outcome of the Cardinals-Cubs game, but it has so far been bad.
They haven't even started.
Red hot St. Louis Cardinals, by
They're
the way?
delayed. They may not even play tonight.
No, they may not. So just one game in St. Louis for the 3. Tough scene for the Cubs. Man, that would mean they get Javier Assad. They get the whole complement of good pitchers then. The Brewers
would be real quick. That would be my nightmare as a reporter.
Why?
3 days in St. Louis, but only 1 game to spend. I need the time at the ballpark in St. Louis. There's some cities where you're like, I don't want to go today. I don't want to go to the game today. I want to go do something.
Yeah.
No, St. Louis. I need those games. Need them.
Yes. I I don't know what to say about that, but the Cubs are not doing well. In fact, even if they don't play this game Sunday night, they'd be 3 games back of the Brewers for first place, and that would only take 1 win out of the Brewers' 4 games here coming up, where they know they will come out of the series still in first place. It is the end of May. It does not really matter if you're in first or second place. It doesn't remotely matter if you're in first or second place. But just a small nugget there. I think this is a good opportunity, and given what we saw this week, I think it makes it an even better opportunity to try and see where we're at 2 months into the season on how different Pat Murphy is from Craig Counsell, if he is different from Craig Counsell, and the ways he's different. Because I really feel like we've experienced that this week with Pat Murphy. We've seen him. Well, for example, there was a play Monday where he called for a bunt that boggles my mind, and I do believe contributed to their loss to the Miami Marlins. Lots of things went wrong Monday, which we'll touch on, but there was also a bunt on Sunday, which you thought, as we discussed this when Bryce Terang bunted, that it was more the player than the manager. But it does feel like there is a greater propensity for that, which Craig Counsell, as we know, not a fan of bunting, never ever did it. I think every credible bit of research that tells you about bunting tells you it's a bad idea if you are doing it for sacrificial purposes at the major league level. And so I'm not really a fan of seeing that sort of surface a little bit, even if it's just 1 or 2 occasions. We've also seen the way he uses the bullpen, I think, is a little different from Craig Counsell, which I think in Cubs land has been a problem for Cubs fans lately, because Counsell's using a lesser bullpen guys in close game deficits, and it has not gone well for them. So that might be something worth discussing as well. But then also, I mean, Sunday, like I said, there was a little bit of a fight again with the Boston Red Sox. This is so not the first time here at the end of May that they have gotten in a fight with a team. They got in a fight on opening day with the New York Mets. They've gotten in a fight with the Tampa Bay Rays that carried major consequences with a couple players suspended, including the manager. Did they have a problem with, I don't even remember, was it New York or Baltimore? They've had a problem with one of those teams too.
Baltimore, James McCann.
Baltimore. That's right. I mean, once is going to happen, twice isn't a trend necessarily, but like 4 times in the first 2 months of the season. I mean, at some point you have to say, is this just the way it is under Pat Murphy? Like, it doesn't necessarily come back to him, but it is a noticeable pivot point, because the Brewers never did this stuff. They just never got into the extracurriculars, hitting guys, if that's what they're doing, or just in general, they just didn't get bogged down by that stuff. I just don't think Craig Counsell had time for that. And so I'm fascinated that there seems to be a change of course here. Overall, what I want you to do is tell me what you have observed over 2 months, the difference between Pat Murphy and Craig Counsell. I know there's a lot to that. And if you think it's a net negative, like I am implying it is, or if you think that it's a net neutral, or maybe even net positive, how do you grade all this?
Is it possible that the manager really doesn't matter all that much? Like,
that is 100%. That's my view. That's my view as well. That despite all of this,
that's where I'm at through 2 months. Like, in game, I don't think Pat Murphy is like a savant. I think there's a lot of room for him to improve. Like, specifically, like the Brewers are really rigid on their platooning late in games, like righty reliever gets lefty bat. Like Kenley Jansen, I thought he's got reverse splits. This guy bring Joey Ortiz to the plate, home run ties the game. Certainly not Oliver Dunn. That's not a good matchup for him. So, but in the grand scheme of things, like, who's the front runner for manager of the year right now? If it's not
Pat Murphy,
Rob Thompson, it's Pat Murphy. So, like, I mean, you can say what you want about that award, which is probably a negative thing if you're saying something about manager of the year, like it doesn't matter. It's not like a reflection like MVP is necessarily, but like on the whole, the Brewers are in first place by 3 games. A lot of teams would like to be where they are, even if you can, pick nits with some of the individual management decisions. Like, well, if you want to talk about the Joey Ortiz bunt, that made no sense to me. I did not understand what they were doing there. I didn't know if you wanted to get in that later. Sorry if I jumped on that.
I do. That's a big one. That's a
like
big one.
Bunt, like calling for a bunt in the top of the 10th is already not a great idea, unless you have like Josh Hader or someone on the mound who's just going to come and strike out 3 guys. You got to play for multiple runs there. You certainly cannot actively try to play for maybe 1 run. So, yeah, I didn't like that call. But on the whole, like, they're playing well. There's buy-in off the field, and they are playing cohesively. And that's a reflection on the manager as well. And things in Cubs land aren't so sunshine and rainbows with the skipper right now. There's some disgruntled folks with their new skipper.
That is true. I would say that 2 months with a manager is not reflective of anything at all, more so than 5-6 years with a manager, as was the case with the Brewers, where they had the most successful run in their franchise history. So I do think Craig Counsell is a big picture manager, and you really have to think about him as a big picture. You have to think of him in terms of the big picture results. But I do go back to what you said originally. I agree with you. I think the manager just does not matter that much. I think Pat Murphy is doing a lot of the things that I thought wouldn't be done at the big league level anymore, including, you kind of alluded to it, just straight adherence to a platoon in some situations that I don't quite understand. Maybe not even like thinking about reverse splits. Just, we want that lefty for the righty. We want Oliver Dunn on the roster.
Which is interesting because Murphy's talked about setting his lineup based off reverse splits sometimes. But there's been a couple instances late in games where a reliever has reverse splits. I believe Hector Neris was the other one.
Yeah.
And they hit Tyler Black instead of Joey Ortiz again. And it did not work out either time. But again, that's very small things, although it's magnified in the scope of a close game. Sunday's game to me felt like, unless William Contreras is hitting a home run at some point with guys on, they were not going to win that game.
Yeah, I don't think
those. They have some of those. The William Contreras save us games. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he does.
Sometimes, or like a lot of the time, which whatever. Their offense is good. Their offense is good. Yeah. Yes. I'm not here to cast aspersions on the offense. It is really quite good. If the season ended today, it would be one of the best offenses in franchise history, which is an indictment on the franchise. But in terms of like OPS plus, it would be among the best ever. So like top 7 or 8. I don't think it's a top 7 or 8, but just as for perspective. Yeah, in Sunday's game, Sal Frelick, Oliver Dunn, and Blake Perkins are the 3 guys up in the 9th against Kenley Jansen. I'm sorry. You can't have those 3 guys go up against Kenley Jansen when Joey Ortiz and Jackson Chourio are on the bench.
It was basically the Josh Hader inning again, except that one at least had Joey Ortiz in it, and he hit a ball hard. But after he got out, it was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand.
Done. This is done. Let me file my game story with 1 out in the 9th.
Don't get that one at all. I don't think he trusts Joey Ortiz, because you go back to Monday, and this is a young player who has had to kind of work for his spot in the lineup, where he's really battling with Oliver Dunn, who is a guy that has struggled mightily this year and has not had a lot of time at AAA. So he's also a young player. But again, that's why I think he just really loves the platoon, because I don't understand Joey Ortiz not having all the opportunities. He hits very well. Yeah, he has some bad swing decisions. Of course he does. He is a rookie. But having him bunt in the 10th inning with a runner on, nobody out, it's already 2-0. The pitcher, who is a lefty, it's a lefty-righty situation. He's thrown 6 balls. It's extra innings, so you just do not bunt in that situation. It does not benefit you to lay a bunt down if you are intending to sacrifice. I don't understand that. To me, that read like, wow, he just really, and to be fair, Joey Ortiz had been a little dinged up in that game with a foot thing, so it's possible it was react to that. I don't know. But that one really, really threw me off. And 6 weeks from now, we look back on this, it's going to mean less than nothing. Like, this is one moment in one game, one decision. There were a lot of things that happened in that Monday game, but that's just not stuff that I guess I've come to expect from the Milwaukee Brewers manager, where it feels like they have turned their back on the idea of the sacrifice bunt in most situations, unless it's a hitter who is deeply struggling, or it's a situation where it's the bottom of extra innings and you just need that runner to go from second and third, like they did with Keston Hiura, ding, 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 a couple times a couple years ago. It made perfect sense. Hiura was struggling. It was perfect. It worked out. So yeah, I agree with you, though, that I think Pat Murphy is kind of the front runner for manager of the year. I mean, results are results. And at some point, we're just screaming at clouds. If you look at a team that's, what are they? 31 and 21? No, they didn't quite get to 10 over. So they're 30 and 21. That's really impressive. You can't deny it. They have no pitching staff, and they are putting it together somehow, and they're 8 games over 500 going into Memorial Day. That's incredible. So who am I to say?
Did you get that off your chest?
Oh, I have more. It's just
felt like that was like weighing heavily on your chest.
Kind of.
That was a sit back and just let go situation.
I think you're right, Curt. I feel at Zen. I think that
Here's what I think. I think each year we name 2 managers of the year, and then within a couple of years, one of them is fired.
It's so
I just
true.
don't think that like there's that much to be gained tactically, or like on evaluations of managers. It's tough. It's tricky. Like even if you disagree with one decision, short term. Like if Willie Adames doesn't strike out, if he hits a single, Pat Murphy looks like a genius. So ultimately, Willie Adames shouldn't chase balls at his eyes.
That would be preferable indeed. Brewers do end up winning. They go 4-5 on this 3-city road trip. That's the longest road trip they'll face this year. 4 of those 5 losses are 1-run losses. So it probably feels like they could have had a little bit more.
Oh, is that 1-run regression I hear? I think
that might be what's happening. That might be what's happening now.
Happened on this trip.
I do think they kind of stole one in Miami too, though. Christian Yelich with a very clutch triple when things looked a little bit bleak. So you have to acknowledge that they got a little bit back in that category. And 4-5 on a 3-city trip is objectively fine. That's something you'll live with. And taking 2 of 3 in Boston is always cool. So I think ultimately it works out for them. Now, going back to that pitching staff that's already in tatters. Joe Ross going on the injured list in that game on Monday. That Monday game where we're talking about was already a difficult one for the Brewers because they basically had to empty their bullpen because Joe Ross was only able to go 1 inning and ended up on the 15-day injured list. It meant Tobias Myers was coming back to the team. He pitched quite a bit this week, he pitched twice this week, both in notable outings, I would say. But Joe Ross now to the IL as well. I don't in the moment think it's like devastating. It sounds like he'll be okay and will probably be able to come back pretty quickly after the 15 days. Joe Ross to me is like Adrian Hauser. He's one of those pitchers that you need guys like that, but you can replace guys like that. So that's kind of how I feel. The problem is they've had to replace so many guys. They've had to replace Wade Miley and Jacob Junis, who is, I don't know when we're going to see him necessarily. Maybe you feel like we're pretty close there, but they've had, DL Hall, Aaron Ashby, who has not been able to put it together. They have had taken so many hits on this pitching staff. And at some point, we say it every week, and it has, I don't think it's just burned them yet. And maybe it never will, because at some point these will start just getting healthy instead of the other way around. But I don't know how you feel about where Joe Ross is at. I still think there's a really effective pitcher in there. Throws that great slider. I still maybe feel like the bullpen was the way to go, but you need starters. You need them. So in that sense, I don't know. What do you think with him going on the IL, what that means?
Yeah, I'm gonna be frank with you. When Joe Ross first went hurt, it's like, oh, that's not good. Another injury. But like, you put the pieces together here, and they don't get much. There's not much of a drop off. Like the replacement from Joe Ross to Tobias Myers. We've seen that Tobias Myers can be really good. He had some real interesting flashes on Sunday.
Agreed.
You just don't want to keep taking hits to the depth, but they're also kind of at the point where it's like, you know what? It's just the hits keep coming, whatever, one after another. But in terms of like on the field, like replacement, like an injury to Joe Ross, that means that Tobias Myers is his replacement, to me is like pretty apples to apples. Like I'm not getting bogged down too much on Joe Ross missing a couple of weeks. Now, if it's like Freddie Peralta goes down and then you're calling up, oh dear God, who's even the guy? Bradley
Blaylock. Yeah.
Just put somebody like add someone to the roster. What's Julio Teheran up to? Like at that point, it's like, wow, this is bad. But Tobias Myers is like a solid replacement level arm. It's not like Joe Ross was blowing the doors off as a pitcher either. So, they've survived to this point, and they're doing fine on the pitching side. Like they're outperforming certainly what the names would indicate. So I would not be too concerned or maligned by Joe Ross missing a couple weeks. Yeah. As long as the ball stops rolling at some point.
Agreed. Yeah. In a way, this is how they built themselves this year, where they say to themselves, pitchers get hurt. They all get hurt. So we can't.
So we're gonna sign all the ones that always get hurt.
we're gonna sign them, and hopefully we end up with pitchers in the aggregate, I believe is the terminology there. yeah, like if a guy goes down, you've got somebody comparable to replace him. Now, that doesn't necessarily bode well because somebody at some point has to just deliver an outing like Freddie Peralta did on Wednesday when it was a 1-0 shutout, and Peralta was amazing. He's the only guy on this in the staff who is capable of that. Obviously, one-offs happen all the time, but that's the only guy. And he has struggled. That's the only guy who could step on the mound and you're like, he could go 7 today, and it could be 7, 1 run, 2 runs shutout. That's possible. Colin Ray, I'd say, is like I can't believe I'm saying this, but losing him would actually really, really hurt as effective and steady as he has been. You don't want to lose any of them. You don't want to lose anybody, but like they can theoretically replace those guys, but that's only because they don't have hammers. They don't have hammers that they can lose. Man, Peralta was so good on Wednesday. It was nice to see him back. It's just a shame that the Brewers faced Jesus Luzardo, future Brewer. Curt Hogg, let's go. Jesus Luzardo. I'm sure he'll be cheap, right?
Well, I was going to say it never happens as you think, but then they signed Rhys Hoskins. So
that is true. It's true.
So I will say I'll believe that Matt Arnold will part with like significant prospect capital in a trade when I see it.
Yeah. William Contreras. What are the chances that he's National League MVP? Because at this point, it's not
low.
Just saying.
I'm going to say low that he actually wins MVP. I mean,
yeah.
He's got a chance to be insane and keep doing it throughout the entire season. But he's also going up against Mookie Betts and Shohei right now, who are both categorically insane as far as baseball players go. But I will say this. I don't know what vote I have yet. You, as well as me, as well as Todd, BBWA in Milwaukee, we'll all have some award vote. We just don't know what it is yet. So I feel fine. And not knowing that I'm an MVP voter, I feel fine talking about this publicly.
Yeah,
there is a legitimate case for William Contreras if you get into a little bit of we need some more discourse around MLB MVP. And here's what I think, right? This was actually maybe going to be my Curt Blanche, but I'm going to get it out there now.
Okay.
NBA, and tell me if you disagree with this. NBA, at least as far as being in Milwaukee and what that means for the Bucks and Giannis and etc. The NBA discourse is exhausting.
It really is.
It
starts 2 months in easily. We start talking about
we're having full-on MVP discussions after a month.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like there was never I don't know what Giannis was going to have to do this year, for example, to win MVP. The discourse was not on his side. And there was no way to overcome that. And it was just 5 months of, it's not just MVP, but it specifically does matter to MVP. MLB doesn't have that. It's kind of just the exact opposite. It's who's the leader in war? Okay, that's the MVP. And that's fine. I've seen it that way to a large degree. I voted for Ronald Acuna last year. That's what came when the end of the year came around. Yeah, you're close, but it's still no doubt in my mind it's Acuna. And then Acuna was unanimous. They were neck and neck all year. And then it's I think MLB could benefit from some of how basketball is viewed, where there's a little more subjectivity. And I think that's where William Contreras, his case could be made. The Brewers, if they win this division, a team that everyone said it was rebuilding, a pitching staff who nobody knows that he's leading them through. He's on pace to play every single game, set a record for most plate appearances by a primary catcher in a full season. And by the way, put up 7 wins above replacement. That's a really good case. It may not match some of the highest WARs in the league, but you're looking at most valuable player. Guys on the Dodgers just don't have to carry that weight. So that's the case. It's only May 26th. A lot of ball game left, but I think some of that would be good for the game.
I think if Shohei Ohtani or Mookie Betts don't win it, it will only be because guys just have trouble choosing between those two. But I think one or both of them are going to be so undeniable that it's just...
Yeah, I mean, that's where we are with baseball nowadays, and it's fine. It's just the best player. And that's fine. That's okay.
And
I have no problem with that. But let's mix it up a little bit. Let's have some fun with this.
Do you think that because there are only 30 voters for an award, that they are less prone to the groupthink that you might see in the NBA, where you have
I would say
voters?
I don't know, because Acuna won. Like all the awards
Right.
last year were kind of like, it's I
Pretty
don't know if it was
easy.
just a last year like anomaly, but pretty much across the board it was, just guys were sweeping or almost unanimous. But I
Yeah.
also will say I do think the BBWA electorate, and this is biased probably because
Oh, for
we're
sure.
in it.
We're in
But
it. Yeah.
I think it's the best electorate for awards in the major sports.
It is primarily guys people who cover the clubs. There aren't that many wild cards, obviously in the NBA with 99
Look at the
voters. There's a
NBA,
lot.
like NBA, 100 people vote on MVP, and it just turns into like talking heads, kind of.
A lot of
And
national
you
guys.
don't like the men and women covering the game of baseball and the BBWA. Like Stephen A. Smith is not in the BBWA.
Stephen A. Smith doesn't even know
Kendrick
what baseball
Perkins
is.
isn't in the BB. Like Harold Reynolds isn't getting a vote. I don't know
Those
if like
guys.
Harold, like it's not those sorts of people. It's like Jeff Passan and you and me and like Derek Gould and St. Louis and people like that take the stuff seriously.
Yeah, and I actually think Harold Reynolds would be a good guy. I mean, I do think he follows it very closely, but I think your point is there aren't people who go on morning shows just to
Right,
talk sports.
like Mad Dog. Mad Dog
Right.
might be the
Yeah. Those
he
guys
would be the equivalent more so. Although Harold Reynolds, I could see having some spicy narrative award votes, but
Harold Reynolds is a baseball guy. Stephen A. Smith tries to talk about everything, and I mean, I'm sure NBA is more his forte.
He tries to talk about baseball.
He should.
Doesn't go well.
I actually really enjoy Stephen A. Smith. I really do, but like, don't talk about baseball. Leave that to us, to you and me, Curt. That's so presumptuous. A couple more things before we get to 3 up, 3 down. Sal Frelick is still really struggling. He had a pretty good week last week where he had a couple homers in back-to-back games. His OPS is still in the like, what is it, 631 or something along those lines. It's worse than it was last year when we would, I think, all acknowledge that he struggled a little bit. He swings and misses a lot. His defense is fine. I mean, he made a really nice diving catch in Fenway this week. And, he's made a couple really, really good defensive plays, but some of it is because he doesn't get the best jump. I mean, I don't want to discredit any of those great diving plays, but that is part of the equation as well. It's the difference between him and Blake Perkins, who gets elite jumps and then just kind of coasts his way to the baseball. I don't know if Sal Frelick grades out well defensively or not. It's probably neutral if I had to guess. But offensively, it's been a real struggle. I don't think there is a solution to this. I don't think sending him down does you any good because you have to have someone to fill his spot. And as we've seen with Joey Weimer, there aren't obvious options. Brewer Hicklin maybe, but like he's not on the 40-man, and I don't know whose spot he gets right now. So I don't think there is a solution, but it feels like, I don't know if you feel like that. Maybe we even throw Jackson Churio in there. If there is a point this year where the Brewers have to address this and find an alternative to one or both of those guys, how do you feel about the outfield?
Yeah, certainly. Like the internal alternative is like Garrett Mitchell will come up and play well.
Oh, for sure.
And I think the good news for the Brewers is there's enough of like a runway leading up to the trade deadline to figure out if that's going to happen. But because if not, suddenly an outfield spot becomes a major piece for this team at the deadline. Blake Perkins has been sufficient, but I don't know if you want him playing every day. Like the bat just becomes a liability at some point when it's every single day. Like we see what the league does to guys; they figure them out. Jackson Churio, I think, still needs to get like regular at bats for sure. Like maybe even play more than he is now. But yeah, like if it doesn't work out for these guys, you need to address outfield. You probably need to get a starting pitcher, and you can't have Christian Yelich and then like Jake Bowers if he keeps this up as like your legitimate outfielders. So the good news is there's still time, and there's still a number of guys that can figure it out with a capital F at the beginning. But
yeah,
maybe Sal Frelick gets it going at some point, but this is basically since like mid-August of last year that he's kind of been this hitter. And, sometimes it takes a while with young guys, but he's not doing damage. He doesn't seem to be like looking to do damage, and that's fine. Like you can live as a hitter without trying to do damage. Look at Bryce Terang. But there's still strikeouts. Like there's not enough plate discipline in there. Not like Bryce Trank's still spraying line drives everywhere too. Like he's just leaning all the way into contact and making the most of it, and has good swing decisions to go with that too. So yeah, it's been a little disappointing, I would say, for Frelick. Like he was the lower ceiling, higher floor guy, but we're not quite seeing that floor. Just based off like the contact profile is even worse than I think we expected, and we didn't expect it to be like high exit velos.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Jake Bauers. We that was kind of the transaction I wouldn't say made fun of, but that was sort of, oh, the Brewers think Jake Bauers is going to be their first baseman in the offseason. We're kind of like, I think they really like him.
Well, it did track until they signed Rhys Hoskins as a very Brewers first base ad.
Yeah.
Like we're just going to continue to throw things at the wall, and like this thing might stick a little more than a lot of those have turned out. Like he's hitting the ball really hard when he makes contact. So Jake Bauer's been pretty good, I would say.
For sure. All right. Before we get to 3 up, 3 down, it's hater discourse season. I will timestamp this if you want to skip ahead because you just don't want to hear about a guy who hasn't been a Brewer for a year and a half, you can go ahead.
Want to hear it.
On early this week, I think it was Monday, Buster Olney did a story on ESPN talking about his usage, specifically with the Milwaukee Brewers after the year 2019, which is an important flashpoint because that is when he lost an arbitration decision with the Brewers. They were separated by about $2 million. The arbitration panel found in favor of the Brewers, so Josh Hader made $2 million less than he wanted to. And in the aftermath of that, and this article quotes both Hader and his agent, Jeff Barry. I'm blanking on the name of the agent, which I shouldn't. I think it's Jeff Barry. They decided that, you know what, we're going to tell the Brewers that we only want to be used in certain situations. We want to be used in the ninth because saves are valued by the arbitration process more so than they should be. But we will make sure it's save situations. We're only going to work one inning rather. So 3 outs and we're out of there. Not going to work back-to-back days. And as Buster only charted, that's primarily what happened. There were a few back-to-backs in there. There was actually one day where he got saves in both halves of a doubleheader. I don't know if people remember that, but I do. I wrote about it at the time. But for the most part, Josh Hader for the next 3 years, 2020, 21, 22, actually even 23. So 3.5 years if we're counting the COVID year, he operated exactly like that. He had one outing in 2020 of 4 outs. He did not have any outings of 4 outs for the next 3 years. And this is a guy that, as we know, as people who follow the Brewers know, was used as a crazy interesting weapon, multiple innings, in some cases more than 2 innings. And how did they get away with it? How did they get the team to agree to it? Basically, the way they put it as well, they don't want to get in a fight, a public feud with their best player or one of their best players. So they will, knowing the Brewers wouldn't want to risk that, they will just agree to it. And, there's also some wisdom in how it worked in that it did work. The Brewers were still effective. Their bullpen was still good. Josh Hader was awesome. And the Brewers were able to go to the playoffs in 2020, which we'll try to forget, but also 2021, 2020. Well, no, 2022, they did not go. And then they traded him late in that season.
They traded him away.
They didn't. Yes,
it works.
Extremely easy to justify that they did not go in 2022 because of that trade of Josh Hader. So all of this is to say it's so nuanced because I find myself being really, really feeling like this arbitration process is just a fraud. There's no way that people who understand baseball are not on this arbitration panel. It's neutral observers. And I think they're being talked into things that are archaic. The idea that saves are still a good indicator of a good relief pitcher is nonsense. We've been thinking like that in years and years. But in the court of law, which is arbitration is a law process, everything relies on precedent. It doesn't make sense if you're following baseball, but in law circumstances, it does. So I think relievers are getting the raw deal, but also you could feel like, well, nobody else is doing this. This is just Josh Hader who decided on these usage guidelines. It's just Josh Hader who told the team, this is how I'm going to be used. And it also feels like he really, he put his own career in front of the team winning, which I can't fault him for on the surface, but part of me still feels like there is some selfishness there. You have to acknowledge that, even if it is in his best interest, and even if it does serve him, as it did when he signed a big contract with Houston, and, oh, by the way, is now working multiple inning stints because he got his big payday, his $95 million payday. How did you come away from this? We've known this is the case, I think. We've read between the lines. This is the first time they just said it. Oh, my God, they admit it meme from you. I think you should leave.
Oh, my God, he admitted
it. I don't think that really, I don't know if it changes much, but it crystallizes like, wow, they really did that. That really surprises me. How did you react to it?
I'm not really surprised. Like it was kind of an annoying boondoggle for a few years there of like neither side would just come out and say it. We all know what's going on. We can see it. We can see a clear like line of demarcation where you stopped using him in multiple innings. Like I don't so much want to like pick sides on this because I think you can there's certainly criticisms to be had of both sides. As far as like specifically the Brewers and Hader go, I do think it's interesting that like the Hader camp was sort of taking advantage of the fact that the Brewers aren't going to want to have this public battle with their best reliever. When at what point in like other moves has PR really mattered to them? They took Corbin Burns to arbitration over $750,000. They traded Josh Hader at the trade deadline. Like they non-tendered Brandon Wood, which I guess that one didn't, but that's still a little bit like a PR hit. Although I think people understood that. Like there's stuff that happens like that. And it's like clearly not the PR side clearly is not relevant to the Brewers' business decision. Like I do think Craig Counsell was like central to the Brewers going with this. Obviously, he was the one that was using Hader and utilizing Hader. But his acceptance of it as a former player and understanding of why Hader was doing this was critical. There's part of me that wishes that Pat Murphy had been the manager at that point, just to see how different it would have been.
That would have been amazing.
Because this is a guy whose only thing is win tonight's game. I'm going to do everything. He pitched Brian Hudson for 2 innings, up 4 runs. They're like best reliever on Friday night.
Could use some
just
Sunday
to make sure they won that game. So it's I love that we have more Hader discourse now. It's very fun. Love that. I also love that MLB teams are the ones that are like every time someone goes to arbitration and it doesn't go great. I think we saw this in the Hader story. You and I were reading that old link from 2019 or 20, whenever it was, where the Brewers are basically in their comments like, yeah, arbitration's just a really tough system. No one loves doing this. It's like you guys are the ones bringing up his old racist, homophobic, etc. tweets in an arbitration panel about baseball from high school, way back in high school. Like you are the ones doing that. You are the ones making this really contentious. You are the ones not paying him.
There has to be a better system
to do about it. I do agree. There has to be a better system. But like in the grand scheme of things, arbitration does its job most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Players don't get a fair market value in most cases, unless you're like Juan Soto at the end of it. I mean, you're making what, like $30 million, or Shohei, whatever he made. Like, guys are not getting their fair market value, but for the most part, players are paid, not fairly, but they're given raises a couple of years into their careers based on performance. It does achieve that, but there are certainly better ways to go about it. And like having it so that the arbitration panel only is going to care about saves and that's how players get paid is stupid. Just get people that know baseball. Anyone that knows baseball can see, oh yeah, this guy's off to like the best reliever start ever. He should totally get the money that he wants.
Yeah. Or the Brewers could try to find a midpoint. They could, maybe the player doesn't want the midpoint. So
I'm sure they did. The team often files, they're going to file well beneath like what they were offering.
Yeah. Thinking the midpoint would work out for the player. So I'm guessing Josh Hader wanted the full value there. And I don't know.
Good for him.
Maybe they should have taken it. I don't know.
If you see what your side thinks of fair comp is, I think it was like Papelbon in this instance. If your side sees that, then you should try to get that money in an agreement.
Can we very briefly ask the question if we are sure that the Brewers got the better end of the Josh Hader trade? Because obviously the dominoes fell really well here. They get Esteury Ruiz. I don't think the William Contreras deal happens without Esteury Ruiz. And you cannot argue that William Contreras isn't awesome. We've done it on this podcast. He's awesome. But I still think that undervalues what 2022 was. They lost 7 games after Hader was traded, in which they led in the 7th inning or later, and they lost those games. And it's because the bullpen that they assembled was quite bad. Now, to say that, you have to also say it wasn't just the Hader trade. It was the fact that they brought in Matt Bush, or that they wanted Taylor Rogers in this deal, believing that he would offset things, or they tried Trevor Rosenthal, which never actually happened. That they didn't. And if you're going to use the supplemental moves as part of your argument, then you also have to say, well, yes, but they got William Contreras, so the Hader trade is automatically a good one. 2022, they had a pretty solid offense. They didn't score a lot of runs as much as they should have, but their offense was capable of scoring runs. They had their big 3. They would have had Williams and Hader at the back of the bullpen. That is the healthiest, the best team that they would have had in the playoffs. And they finished 1 game behind the Philadelphia Phillies, who went to the World Series. I'm sure people are hearing this thinking Philadelphia Phillies were better than the Brewers. They probably were, but I still think that team was more positioned than we realized to make a serious run. And you can argue, I think safely, that they lost that when they lost Josh Hader. Things went sideways immediately. You can even talk about the clubhouse part of that and the surprise or whatever, but things went sideways immediately. So I want to include that in the conversation of, did they get the better end of it? The players that they've acquired, Robert Gasser is a good guy to have. I think for 1 year of Hader, that was good. He was going to get traded in the offseason. So
this is why this is going to be the forever gift for Brewers people and fans. Like, there is no clear-cut answer. If you look at it like a couple certain ways, there is a clear-cut answer, but that also requires some gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's some gymnastics to get to the William Contreras was part of the Hader deal.
There's also what I just did is gymnastics. Like, sure, they maybe could have gone to the World Series, or they could have lost in 2 games to the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Correct, exactly. Like, I am almost certain that team makes the playoffs. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Being in Pittsburgh for those 3 days, the vibes were unlike anything I've ever experienced. And
this is right after the trade you're talking about.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, like, that impacted them the rest of the season, which, by the way, like, as an aside, I like thinking back on it, I find it interesting that Counsell was not like able to right the ship in this regard when that was like considered, his big thing was the clubhouse. They never really rallied together. Not saying they didn't try to, but certainly never like translated to the field. But anyway, I don't know where it's going with that, but yeah, the discourse, JR, will never go away. Never.
No. All right. Well, that's enough. We'll finally put that to bed. We are deep into this podcast now before we get to 3 up, 3 down, but let's do it. Let's go into some of the more granular details from the week. It is 3 up, 3 down. Curt, would you like to get us started?
Are we going to get murdered for bringing up the Hader trade?
Murdered by whom? No.
I don't know.
We're extremely beloved in the world, Curt. No one will hurt us.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Brewers people, but
I am fascinated. I'm fascinated by it. I think, like you said, it depends on how you look at it. There are 2 really strong ways to look at that.
All right. Should I kick this off? Is that what?
Let's do it. Yep. 3 up, 3 down.
Jared Koenig started 2 straight games.
Yes. First guy since.
I don't even want to poo-poo this with like, oh, he was an opener. Nah, he started 2 games. Openers don't even do that. That's cool, right? Starting a game is still a thing. It also worked, and Jared Koenig has been pretty dang good, which is the most Brewers thing to do. Have this guy who no one pays any attention to in camp, and turns out, middle of the year, he's a pretty important arm. It'd be interesting to see if the Brewers keep trying this out. I don't see why they would not. Now to have to like line up, well with the opponent and how the bullpen is rested, but pretty nice little nugget for him. Get 2 games started and was a part of almost a no-hitter in one of them. So it's a pretty nice weekend in Boston for a young fellow.
Yeah, indeed. 6 no-hit innings, which between him and Colin Ray, very impressive before Rafael Devers took care of that with a booming double to the wall. But Jared Koenig, quite a story. We've written about it. We've talked about it. It's cool that he's in this position. And like you said, that's nothing to really sneeze at. First guy since Zach Greinke in 2012. I decided this is one of my favorite stats, I think, in addition to Prince Fielder having 2 inside the park home runs in his career, that Greinke started 3 consecutive games, and it took just the perfect confluence of circumstances. He gets ejected from a start of 1 inning, if depending on whose side you believe, a misunderstanding about who he was mad at when he spiked a baseball after he was late covering the bag. The umpires thought he was taking exception with them, so they booted him out. He started the next game. Why not? Didn't last long, but started the next game because he had plenty left in the tank. And that was the last game before the All-Star break. So then the All-Star break happens. A week goes by. He's ready to go again. Starts the next game. That game the Brewers won. So love that detail. And Koenig, the first guy to start back-to-back games since then. I'm going to stay with I'm going to go to Sunday where we had this fracas over bunting. I think this is the game in Boston where
you're talking about the Microbrew podcast.
Yes. Chris Martin, not the lead singer of Coldplay, is a joke that's been made so many times, was pitching. The Brewers led off with a bunt. It was a good one from Blake Perkins, kind of died in the grass, leadoff single. Then Bryce Terang bunted him over. Again, this is the one we presume was Terang and not from the dugout. He was thrown out. Brewers ended up not scoring in the inning. And Chris Martin, I think, was kind of upset about that. He seemed like angry that people had tried to bunt on him a couple times. I don't know why he isn't like, thanks guys for giving me.
He should join the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's just a weird thing. Like, I didn't know pitchers would get upset by that. I like that. I know that if you bunt in the middle of a no-hitter.
My brother in Christ, they gave you an out.
I mean, it was bad. Like, I wish they hadn't. If I'm a Brewers fan, I absolutely am like, why did they bunt twice? So he got into it with Quentin Berry, the first base coach, and benches emptied. Really, really quick escalation of something that I just didn't understand. Like this one, I really didn't understand.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. I don't think Chris Martin was like taking shots at the Brewers, like at least like directly. But he was probably pissed about the bunting, and Quentin Berry heard something about it, and yeah, he had some choice. That was astonishing to see Quentin Berry get that upset.
As you indicated, the Brewers have now started a fight with 3 teams in the American League East. They are not in the American League.
Everyone on this club want the smoke. Is there a single player on the club? Oh, Hobie Milner. Yeah. Maybe that's my next story. What players on the Brewers don't want the smoke?
Yeah.
Can you name another one? Can you name one other player?
Guys on this team who legitimately do not want to fight
or don't want the smoke.
I mean, I don't think Willie Adames is really that guy, but you know,
did you see him in Baltimore when Brian McCann offered, and I don't think he meant it. And Willie said, "You want to do this? Let's throw down." No, Willie,
you're right.
Willie's
I'm wrong.
Joey Ortiz, maybe he's a nice guy. Oh, Blake Perkins, Blake
Perkins is too pure a person to want the smoke. Yeah, they just like to fight with the AL East. Somehow the Yankees, with Aaron Judge throwing up his hands at second base for an interference play that wasn't called, somehow that one didn't turn into a fight. But all the rest of the team
4-for-4 though on some sort of controvery involving every American League East opponent. The Blue Jays. I'm curious to see what Dalton Varsho does.
Yeah, some Danny Jansen, fellow Wisconsinite there. All right, what's number 2 for you?
Number 2 for me, Christian Yelich stole home plate.
Incredible. We haven't even mentioned it yet. How is that possible?
Well, because the Brewers lost that game, JR.
That's true. There was a lot going on in that game.
A confluence of misfortune and also shooting themselves in the foot lost them that game. But Christian Yelich did manufacture a run entirely by himself. He walked or singled or something, stole second, took third on overthrow, and then steals home as the ball is nonchalantly flipped back to the pitcher. We need more of this in baseball. Actually, no, we don't, because it makes when they do it super freaking cool. Like when Ellie De La Cruz did it last year against the Brewers, that was pretty awesome. So I don't know, just a really sweet play. You don't see it much. First straight steal of home since my beloved Scott Pasednik, the greatest baseball player of all time, or at least certainly in 10-year-old Kurt's mind. One of how many players hit a walk? How many guys have hit a walk-off home run in a World Series game though? Probably not more than 10. He's one of them.
Yeah. Put a pin in that one because we're going to maybe discuss Scotty Pods a little bit later on here. Don't look now, Kurt.
Me likey.
Yelich has only played in 25 games coming into today. He's got a 981 OPS. He reaches base at a 411 clip. We thought that he was pretty good last year. Those numbers blow last year out of the water. He's got 7 stolen bases already. He's got 5 homers, which, isn't anything special per se. That's something that he's not doing, that he was doing a ton of in 2018 and 19 when he was an MVP. But this right now is the best season, and it's not close since those MVP seasons. This is incredible Christian Yelich. And we don't notice it. We don't notice it because of William Contreras also being credible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Yelich's also he's been a little bit colder, like compared to the way he started the season since he came back.
Yes.
But I'm still like waiting on. There's going to be a week or 2 weeks where he starts hitting some homers and like, it's like a 1100 OPS, 1200 OPS over 2 weeks. Like that is very much within him. Once he just like really unlocks it at the plate again, and then the numbers will go back up. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm waiting on. It's like I feel like this is sort of a Brewers thing in general too. We're kind of like treading water with these guys right now. The Brewers aren't playing great. They're not playing bad, and everyone else in the division is playing not great. So there's just like biding time until things kind of get going again.
Yeah. All right, my number 3 is something that happened on Friday night at Fenway Park on Apple TV. William Contreras hit a bomb. What else is new? Hit one over the fence at the Green Monster in left field, right into a popcorn vessel, a popcorn canister that a couple fans had out there. Popcorn goes flying everywhere. It becomes a whole thing throughout the course of the broadcast, maybe a little more than it should have been, but I thought it was still kind of fun. Tim Dillard, who of course is not on the broadcast because it's an Apple game, shows up kind of out of nowhere, delivers them fresh popcorn during a sideline hit from Apple. They went out to the Monster, talked to the fans, had the fans on the field right away after the game where William Contreras signed their popcorn bucket and then took a picture with them. He's still in his catcher's gear. I thought that was really kind of funny and clever on Apple's part. Apple broadcasts have come a long way since they started a couple years ago. Believe me, a long way.
No, but, dude, I've always been an Apple broadcast respecter. Well, I was one of the OGs.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking a little bit more of the on-air talent now.
Don't get me started on the RBI probability. That's always been kind of stupid.
Yeah, they lean into the stats, and sometimes you get some weird stuff.
I am a respecter of. I didn't even watch the Apple TV broadcast on Friday. I was watching the MLB at Bat 3D broadcast, which, by the way, oh my,
so
gosh.
Fun. I was doing that today.
Sync it up if you haven't. If you have MLB TV, you have access to that. You can click on the 3D part on the Gamecast and then sync it up with the radio, and you will be happy you did. Just trust me.
All right, what's your third?
My numero tres is Bryce Wilson. I don't know if you knew I was going there, but Bryce Wilson has this career arc is really funny to me. He came up as a really highly touted starter, had immediate success, like shoved against the stacked eventual world champion with an asterisk, it was the bubble, Dodgers in the NLCS in 2020. Like right off the bat, good start to his career as a highly regarded young starter.
Yep.
And then it turned into a lot of pumpkins. Like it was fall festive season and he was a pumpkin out there. The Braves got rid of him. The Pirates added him, and
he was bad.
If you were added as a waiver guy by the 2022 Pirates, it ain't gonna go well for you.
And couldn't stay on the 2022 Pirates. Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, he's a reliever, and then it was like it kind of slowly morphed into something really nice there for the Brewers, and then kind of caught me by surprise when they were stretching him out this spring, saying, "Oh, we could start him." And then now, just by happenstance, like he's a starter and kind of doing what everyone expected him to do 6 years ago. So I don't know if it's going to be like sub-3 ERA all year, but it's just like a consistent string of outings where he's finding a way every single time, like a different way too, depending on what's working and what's not. It's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah. All right, my number 3, I think, to close things down, we're gonna talk a little softball, Curt. As we were watching this podcast was going on, I was watching out of the corner of my eye, Missouri against Duke, the women's softball. Why does this matter on a Brewers podcast? Well, Duke has a player named Frankie Frelick. That is, in fact, the sister of Sal Frelick. She's going to the softball World Series, the College World Series. Duke upsets Missouri, wins at the Super Regional 2-1. Frelick had a home run yesterday, this being Saturday, and in a game that Duke actually lost. She got hit by a pitch in the 9th inning that was part of a 4-run rally. So it's a 7-inning game, so they're in extra innings. They score 4 runs. Missouri comes back and actually hits a 3-run homer in the bottom half, scores 3. And then they get the tying run on, hit a screamer that goes right to center field. Frelick is the catcher. Frankie Frelick is the catcher for Duke. Had a nice year and will be playing in the Softball World Series. She joins Bryce Terang's sister, Brianna Terang, back in 2013, I believe, that Oklahoma team that was regarded as one of the best softball teams of all time at the time. She was the 9-hitter, but very, very good player for them, Brianna Terang. And For those who might remember, Danielle Lowry, Brett Lowry was a top Brewers prospect, traded away, of course, for Sean Markham in advance of the 2011 season. Danielle Lowry for Washington was the most outstanding player in the College World Series at one point. She was a pitcher, tremendous Canadian, outstanding, has played in the Olympics, and led Washington to the national championship. So here ends your softball discourse. But yes, Frankie Frelick going to the College World Series. That'll be fun. Here are the things we did not talk about, Curt. We did not talk about Andrew Monasterio hitting a bomb in Miami to dead center. Not sure I saw that coming. That's incredible. We didn't even discuss the ground rule shenanigans that cost the Brewers the game on Monday. Jake Bauers hit what would have scored Monasterio with a big insurance run, but it got stuck in the padding in right field. It became a ground rule double, even though Monasterio would have scored and probably reached first again if he had continued running around the diamond. But they call it a ground rule double. He is stranded at third base. The Brewers lose that lead in the ninth. It's a 2-1 game. It becomes 2-2. They lose in extras. Ridiculousness. So the ground rule stuff just really bothers me. Tobias Myers gets his first career win in relief in that Marlins series, and then pitched again on Sunday. So a big milestone checked off for him. Bruce had 5 runs after 2 outs, just all kinds of clutch hitting against Boston on Saturday. And I think that'll do it. Curt, did you want to weigh in on the ground rule business?
It's going to be it's coming.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. All right. We'll hold off.
You talk about my beloved Scott Pasednik.
Let's go. We are way over time, so we got to do this quickly. Let's do our weekly visit back in time in Brewers history. It is Remember When. As we discussed, Christian Yelich stole home this week. That is the first Brewers player to steal home without the benefit of a double steal since 2003. That was, of course, Scott Pasednik, rookie for the Milwaukee Brewers that season. He had a tremendous 2003 season. The Brewers were quite bad, so it wasn't like it was part of a great team. But Scotty Pods winning your heart over, young Curt Hogg over in 2003. I went back and tried to find all the times that the Brewers have stolen home without the benefit of a double steal or what I considered a straight steal. I discovered that there's some problems trying to mess with the etymology there. People don't like, well, it can't be a straight steal. There's only whatever. Steals are steals. You know, in my mind, if you steal home without like somebody trying to steal the catcher's throw running first to second, it's a different play, but it's only really happened, my version, straight steal, 7 times in Brewers history. And this was the most recent one back in 2003. For those who don't remember Scott Pasednik, they claimed him. The Brewers did off waivers from the Seattle Mariners in October of 2002. It was a player general manager Doug Melvin had in Texas, but had traded. One write-up in the Journal Sentinel, our newspaper, said there are plenty of players like him. The Brewers had one last year in Ryan Christensen. So people did not think highly of this, but
shame on whomsoever wrote that.
It's so bad. He ended up winning every Rookie of the Year honor under the sun, except the BBWAA honor. That went to Dontrelle Willis, and it wasn't even really close. Willis had 17 first place votes, and Pasednik had 8. So we talk about groupthink earlier. Not in this case, because Scott Pasednik won all the rookie awards, but he ended up losing in total points 118 to 81 to Willis. Actually, I should try to quiz you on who won if I told you a Kansas City shortstop won the American League Award that year, do you think you'd be able to come up with the name?
Angel Barreau.
Oh, yes, man. You are a student of 2003. Angel Barreau.
2003 was my prime.
Scott Pasednik. Oh, go ahead. 2003 was your prime.
Yeah, I was 8.
You were 8 years old. It was also my prime. I was in college. Anyway, Scott Pasednik hit above 300. He scored 100+ runs and stole more than 40 bases. That was the 4th rookie to do that. He actually got that 100th RBI on his last RBI of the season, or last at bat of the season. It was a home run. That's how he closed down 2003. He had only joined the starting lineup in May that year because Alex Sanchez was not doing well. So they brought up Pasednik kind of in a pinch. And Pasednik kind of took it and ran with it. You know, Ricky Weeks actually scored his first career run in that last game of the season when Pasednik hit that home run. It wasn't on the home run, but I found that kind of an interesting intersection. That was a Bill Hall triple that scored Ricky Weeks, now associate manager of the Milwaukee Brewers. And he stole home on August 30th, 2003. The Brewers had won 10 straight games. I don't know if you remember that 8-year-old Curt Hogg, but that was an incredible time.
There was promises of bleached hair, and I don't know if it happened or not. But
yeah, I don't know either.
Dyed hair. There was an announcer. Who was that fellow? Darren Sutton?
Yes, that could be.
Make that next week's Remember When. Look into that one.
The Brewers, they were so bad. Like, even winning 10 in a row got them to 62 and 77. But for 10 days in late August, I think. Yes, August, they were unstoppable. It was crazy. And even after that, they won like 12 of 13 and 14 of 16. Just crazy how baseball works like that. And then they lost 7 of the next 8, and it was all over. Pacetic was traded to the Chicago White Sox in 2005 for Carlos Lee. El Caballo had a couple productive
That
seasons.
was the worst day of my childhood.
That would make you alone because most people loved the trade, and I included. I thought it was a really great trade, and it worked out great for both sides.
Idiots.
Pacetic went on to become an
all-star. How could they trade away my favorite player?
True. Very true. 8-year-old Curt. I'm so sorry.
I was 10 by that time, but yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You've matured. Carlos Lee, of course, was an all-star, but so was Scott Pacetic. That one time he was in the World Series, hit that walk-off home run off Brad Lidge in Game 2 of the World Series to break a 6-6 tie, as you mentioned. And wrote his name into the history books for the White Sox, World Series champions, but also a very good rookie for the Brewers back in 2003. All right, Curt.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me pointing to my Scott Pacetic walk-off World Series home run bobblehead.
Love it.
There.
Love it.
Right behind my head. All right.
Was it the high socks that you loved? You loved the high socks from Scott Pacetic?
It was, you know how people nowadays talk about aura? This man had so much aura. The eye black, the high socks, the swag, the handsome face.
Absolutely.
Elite face.
Elite face.
All right. Shall we?
All right. Yeah, let's close this down the way we do every week. It is Curt's take of the week. Here it is. Curt Blanche.
Hello, JR. You mentioned a ground rule double.
I did.
This rule is so stupid.
It really is.
Stupid.
Fix your padding, first of all. Fix your walls.
Look, I'm not going to be the one to advocate for umpires to have more discretion and be able to use their discretion on things because
that's a good point.
They get things wrong. However, we're already doing it on some things. Say, for instance, that play at the end of the Orioles White Sox game earlier this week, where they determined that the fielder had been hindered in his attempt to catch the infield pop fly at the end of the game. We're using discretion all the time. Ball strike, safe out. These are all discretion calls. How is it that we have no alternative course of action in place for a ball with a runner on first and 2 outs and a ball that's hit 405 feet to the gap, or straightaway center field? It bounds off the dirt and then skips over the fence. That's scoring the runner 90 out of 100 times, 95 out of 100 times. The only exception is if you're running, probably
me or Rhys Hoskins.
Yeah, probably fairly similar sprint speed.
I think Hoskins makes it.
Yeah, I would hope Rhys Hoskins.
I've seen Rowdy Tellez score from first base on a ball in the corner. Yeah, I know it can be done by everyone.
The fact that there's not I don't even need this in before 2 outs. I think we could add that for sure, like a play like Monasterio's, which he's for sure scoring. Be fine discretion, but even if you don't want to add discretion to it, every time there's a ground rule double with 2 outs in the inning, the guy scores. Something as simple like that. Why are we giving the pitcher and the defense the benefit of the doubt for giving up a ball that was a wall scraper? Why are we doing think about it? Ground rule doubles are not bloops that the guy, advances to second on and the guy can only get to third from first. These are well struck balls for the most part.
Yeah, it feels like such a lottery. It's where the ball bounces. It just, it's like when they had that flagpole in Houston, and if you hit it off the flagpole, it was somehow still in play. What is that? How do you not
the only exception might be Wrigley, I would think, where it's just the ivy gets balls stuck in it, and that creates a hazard sometimes. But I think in that instance, you got to just go whatever the ruling is that hurts the Cubs.
Go with
the one there because they have the ivy on the stupid walls.
But again, use the discretion. If you say, "Oh, the ivy, it got in there right away," use the discretion.
There's going to end up being maybe some controversies on discretion, but what are we doing? This is stupid. This is a stupid rule. Yeah. Also, as another thing, how do we not have better catch probability yet? Statcast has it, but it's not good. And I think they kind of admit that a little bit too. They, say don't use this as gospel on a play-by-play basis. And maybe that's the good thing about fielding is it's this subjective thing. But you think about Jackson Churrio's diving play that he didn't dive, could have been diving play that might have ended the game on Monday's game in the 9th inning. I saw some things that were oh, he was just lucky to, he's great jump and great speed to even be that close. And then another thing, it's why isn't he catching that? So I don't know. There were just a couple instances late in that game that had me wondering What's going on?
Yeah, between the Jackson Churio dive, the double play, or the ground rule double, the choice to bunt Joey Ortiz. I mean, that was just a really stupid loss. There's just no explanation to me how they lost that game. There were 2 outs and nobody on, when Trevor McGill checked in the 9th. Like there was also 2 outs and nobody on, and they still didn't win the game. So tough. That one was tough. But I agree with you 100%. I don't understand why discretion is being cut out. I don't know if it's because they don't have outfield umpires, if they feel like that makes it difficult to get a really good look at the play, like a really good evaluation. I don't know, but we have cameras on everything. How can we not make calls, couple it with, what you see in real time with what you see on the cameras? There has to be a way to make that work. It's so dumb. Just, it feels like an anachronism from another time where there were like no fences and you just had to call it that way because it was the only fair way to do things. I don't know what's going on with that. Curt, I think that's finally it. You ready for some Chicago Cubs action? Some Brewers Cubs, Craig Counsell fest?
I am prepared. My body is ready. Bring on the narratives. Bring on the drama.
Love the narratives. Love it all.
Bring on a 2-2 series split.
I imagine that, in fact, will be the case. We'll see. Cubs have great starters, and they're all going to be pitching in this series. Although I do think this Cubs-Cardinals game is going to happen tonight, so it may not be Javier Assad. We will see. But that's going to do it for us here on Microbrew. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of the podcast. We'll be back to chat more Brewers next week. Thank you, everybody. Take care.